The glass was already on the bar top. 40-year Macallan, 2 fingers, no ice. Poured exactly the way he liked it, because men like him didn't repeat themselves, and people who forgot how he took his whiskey didn't stay employed. But the glass was wrong. I knew it the second I saw her fingers. The blonde, 5'8", ivory Hervé Leger dress, diamonds catching every light in the room, had been draped over his arm for the last 45 minutes, laughing at things that weren't funny, touching his sleeve like she owned the fabric, playing the part of a woman in love so convincingly that everyone in Venom, Manhattan's most exclusive underground lounge, believed her. Everyone except me. Because I watched her slip something into his glass. It happened in the space between heartbeats. 1 second she was reaching across the bar for a cocktail napkin, leaning forward just enough to pull his attention to the neckline of her dress. The next, her left hand, the one he couldn't see, the one pressed against the mahogany, tilted forward. A tiny glass vial, no bigger than a perfume sample, emptied itself into $40,000 whiskey. She palmed the vial, tucked it into her clutch, and smiled at him like she'd just told him she loved him. My hand stopped mid-pour. The bottle of Hendrix I was holding for table 9 suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds. My heart slammed into my ribs so hard I thought the woman on stool 4 could hear it. The music, some low, throbbing electronic beat that made the walls pulse, suddenly sounded like it was coming from underwater. I had exactly 11 seconds to make a decision. 11 seconds before Kang Seonjin, the man the entire eastern seaboard whispered about in locked rooms and guarded conversations, the man whose name alone could clear a courthouse or collapse a stock price, raised that glass to his lips. And died. My name is Dara Maddox. I'm 26 years old, and I pour drinks for people who could buy the building I live in with what they spend on a Tuesday night. Venom isn't the kind of bar you walk into. You're invited, vetted, background checked by people who never introduce themselves but somehow know your blood type and your grandmother's maiden name. The clientele is a cocktail of old money, new criminals, and the gray area in between where billion-dollar deals happen over bourbon and someone's life expectancy gets shortened before the second round arrives. I got the job because I'm invisible. Not literally, I mean, I exist. 5'3", dark brown skin, box braids pulled into a knot, no makeup because I can't afford the kind they expect here and refuse to wear the kind I can. I have the kind of face people look through, not at. In a room full of supermodels and socialites and women engineered by surgeons to stop traffic, I'm wallpaper. And wallpaper sees everything. I've been working at Venom for 14 months. In that time, I've watched a senator snort cocaine off a first edition Hemingway, seen a tech billionaire cry into his martini about a daughter who won't return his calls, and once, just once, watched 2 men walk into the back room and only one walk out. Nobody asked me about any of it. Because I'm the bartender. I pour, I wipe. I nod when they talk, I disappear when they don't. But tonight, I couldn't disappear. Tonight, I just watched a woman poison a glass of whiskey intended for the most dangerous man in the room. And I had 7 seconds left. 6 seconds. I looked at the glass. The Macallan sat perfectly still, amber and treacherous, catching light from the crystal chandelier above the bar. Whatever she'd put in it was colorless, odorless, dissolved on contact. Professional grade. This wasn't some jealous girlfriend with crushed-up sleeping pills. This was assassination chemistry. 5 seconds. I looked at Kang Seonjin. He was mid-conversation with a man I didn't recognize, silver-haired European suit, the kind of tan that comes from yachts, not beaches. Seonjin was listening more than talking, his head tilted at that angle predators use when they're deciding whether something is worth hunting. His jaw was sharp enough to cut glass. Black hair pushed back from his forehead, eyes so dark they absorbed light instead of reflecting it. He wasn't handsome. He was devastating. The way an earthquake is devastating, you couldn't look away, and by the time you realized you should run, it was already too late. 4 seconds. His hand moved toward the glass. 3. Long fingers. A ring on his left index finger, onyx, engraved with something I couldn't read from this distance. The same hand that, according to whispered legends, had personally ended the Morto Syndicate's expansion into Queens. The same hand that signed checks for children's hospitals and death warrants with equal penmanship. 2. His fingers wrapped around the glass. 1. I moved. Not gracefully, not planned. I reached across the bar under the pretense of setting down a fresh coaster, and I placed my hand directly over the mouth of the glass, stopping it halfway to his lips. The entire world froze. Every molecule of air between us crystallized. The blonde's smile calcified. The silver-haired man stopped talking mid-syllable. And Kang Seonjin's eyes, those black, bottomless predator eyes, locked onto mine with an intensity that made my vision tunnel. I leaned forward, close enough to smell his cologne, sandalwood and smoke, and something underneath that was purely chemical, purely male. Close enough that my lips were inches from his ear. Close enough that the blonde couldn't read what I was about to say. And I mouthed 3 words. She poisoned it. Then I pulled the glass away, set it behind the bar, and placed a fresh one in front of him. Poured 2 fingers of Macallan from the same bottle. Clean glass, clean pour. My hands didn't shake. I don't know how, but they didn't shake. My apologies, sir, I said out loud, loud enough for the blonde to hear. Wrong glass. That one had a chip in the rim. The silence lasted 3 seconds. 3 seconds where I could feel the blonde's fury radiating off her skin like heat from asphalt. 3 seconds where Seonjin's gaze held mine, unblinking, unreadable, impossibly still. Then he picked up the new glass. Thank you, he said. His voice was low, accented, the consonants precise in a way that suggested English was a language he'd chosen to master, not one he'd been born into. For your attention to detail. He drank, slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. The blonde shifted on her stool, her smile back in place but brittle now, cracked at the edges. Baby, she cooed, pressing herself against his arm. Can we go somewhere more private? I'm bored of this place. Soon, he set the glass down. I'd like another. I poured. He drank, the blonde watched. And something passed between us, me and the most dangerous man in New York. Something that wasn't attraction or gratitude or fear, but all 3 twisted together into a rope I could already feel tightening around my throat. I had just saved the life of a man who ended lives for a living. God help me. The blonde left at 11:47 p.m. I know because I watched the clock like it was counting down to detonation. She kissed Seonjin on the cheek, lingering, possessive, whispered something in his ear that made his jaw tighten, and glided toward the exit with the kind of walk that said she knew exactly what her hips were doing. She didn't look at me, not once. That scared me more than if she'd stared. Seonjin stayed, moved to the corner booth, the one with the high backs and the sound-dampening panels. The silver-haired European followed. 2 more men appeared, lean, watchful, with the coiled stillness of bodyguards who'd been trained to kill long before they'd been trained to protect. They talked for another hour. I couldn't hear a word. At 12:53 a.m., my manager Declan, Irish, ex-military, caught my eye from across the room. Corner booth wants a word. My stomach dropped. With who? With you. His expression was carefully neutral. I'd go if I were you. I untied my apron, took 3 breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth, exactly the way my therapist taught me before I'd had to stop seeing her because I couldn't afford the copay. Then I walked to the corner booth. He was alone. The bodyguards had retreated to the entrance, 2 shadows flanking the door. The booth was dim, a single amber light recessed into the ceiling, casting his face in planes of gold and darkness. He didn't stand when I approached, didn't gesture for me to sit, just watched me with those depthless eyes, his fingers steepled beneath his chin, his body so still he could have been carved from marble. I stopped at the edge of the table. You wanted to see me. Sit. It wasn't a request. I sat anyway, because my legs were about to give out, and I'd rather collapse into leather than onto the floor. Dara Maddox, he said. Hearing my name in his voice felt like being submerged in cold water. every nerve ending fired at once. How do you know my? 26, born in Bed-Stuy. Mother deceased ovarian cancer 4 years ago. Father unknown. Younger brother Marcus, 17, currently a junior at Brooklyn Tech on a partial scholarship you supplement with 60% of your tips. He recited it without notes, without breaking eye contact, without inflection, like reading a grocery list. 3 semesters at Hunter College, pre-law, discontinued due to financial constraints. The room tilted. You had me investigated. I have everyone in this building investigated. It's the reason I'm still alive. He paused. Well, one of the reasons. The silence between us was thick enough to drown in. What was in the glass? I asked. Tetrodotoxin derivative, modified for delayed onset. His tone was clinical, detached. She would have had approximately 40 minutes to establish an alibi before cardiac arrest set in. Death would have appeared natural, very clean, very expensive. My throat closed, and the blonde. Natasha Varin, Russian intelligence, retired, currently freelancing for the Yun Syndicate out of Busan. Something shifted in his expression, not anger, but something colder. She's been my companion for 3 weeks. Your companion. A word that covers many arrangements, most of which are strategic. So you knew she was dangerous. Everyone in my world is dangerous, Ms. Maddox. The question is never if they'll betray you, but when and how. He leaned forward. I could see the engraving on his ring now, a serpent swallowing its own tail. What I didn't know was who would warn me. The weight of his gaze was physical. It pressed against my skin, sank into my bones. Why? He asked, one word, heavy enough to crack the table. Why what? Why did you save my life? I thought about lying, giving him something noble, because it was the right thing to do. But he'd had me investigated. He'd know a lie before it left my lips. Because my brother's scholarship review is in 3 months, I said. And if you died in this bar, Venom closes. Permanently. Crime scene, investigation, every employee questioned. I can't afford to lose this job. Silence stretched. Then Kang Seonjin did something I wasn't prepared for. He smiled. Not warm, nothing about this man was warm, but real. Fractionally, dangerously real. The way a blade catches light before it cuts. Selfish honesty, he said. The only kind worth trusting. He reached into his jacket. For one terrible heartbeat, I thought gun, knife, wire, but he withdrew a business card. Black, heavy cardstock. A single phone number embossed in silver. He slid it across the table. A way to reach me, should you need it. He stood, buttoning his jacket with one hand. Or should I need you? I'm a bartender. You were a bartender. His eyes held mine one final time. Now you're something else. He walked away. The bodyguards materialized around him. The door opened, swallowed him, closed. I sat in the booth for 11 minutes, staring at a black card that felt like a lit fuse in my hand. I didn't call the number. 3 days I carried it tucked inside my copy of Their Eyes Were Watching God, pressed flat against the spine like a secret between 2 women who understood what it meant to survive. 3 days of pouring drinks, riding the subway, helping Marcus with AP chemistry, microwaving ramen at 2 a.m. Normalcy so aggressive it felt rehearsed. On the 4th night, I came home from a double shift and found Marcus sitting on the kitchen floor. Not hurt, just sitting, knees pulled up, back against the cabinet, staring at nothing with an expression that sent every alarm in my body screaming. Marcus, I dropped to my knees beside him. What happened? He held up his phone. The screen showed a photograph, our apartment building taken from across the street, time-stamped 3 hours ago, and in the window of our 5th-floor unit, clearly visible, unmistakable, was Marcus, sitting at his desk, doing homework. Someone had photographed my brother through our window. The text beneath the image was from an unknown number. The bartender who sees too much SHOULD learned to close her EYES. Or the little brother closes his, permanently. The phone shook in my hands, or my hands shook around the phone. I couldn't tell the difference. My vision went white at the edges, then red, then black, cycling through panic and fury and something primal that I recognized from the night my mother died. That animal awareness that the universe was trying to take something from me, and I was not going to let it. Dara, Marcus's voice was small, 17 and small. What did you do? I pulled Sionjan's card from the book. Dialed. It rang once. I was wondering when you'd call. Midnight and gravel, no surprise, no warmth. What happened? They threatened my brother. My voice came out steady. I don't know how. They photographed him through our window. They know where we live, they know our schedule, and they are going to kill him to punish me. Silence. Then, and I heard it, the slight shift in his breathing, the tightening of something lethal behind his composure. Are you home? Yes. Lock the door, kill the lights. Move your brother to the bathroom, no windows. There's a black car on your corner. It's been there since Tuesday. I moved to the window, looked down. A black Escalade idled beneath the streetlight, exhaust curling into the December air. You've been watching me. I've been protecting you, whether you wanted it or not. His voice dropped. My men will be at your door in 90 seconds. Take your brother, take nothing else. Where are we going? Somewhere they can't touch you. I should have argued, should have called the police, should have done anything other than what I actually did. But I looked at Marcus, 17, brilliant, scared. And I remembered my mother in that hospital bed, her hand going slack in mine, her eyes dimming like someone slowly turning off a light. I remembered the promise I'd whispered into the silence after she stopped breathing. I will keep him safe. Whatever it costs, I will keep him safe. Whatever it costs. I grabbed our coats, grabbed Marcus, and walked into the night. Welcome back, midnight hearts and danger addicts. If you're still here, you're already in too deep, just like Dara. Hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and tell me in the comments, would you have made that call? Because Dara did. And the number she dialed doesn't have a hang-up option. Let's keep going. The car took us to a building in Tribeca that didn't exist on Google Maps. I know because Marcus checked, 3 times, hunched in the backseat, his face cycling between fear and the electric fascination that 17-year-old boys feel when their lives suddenly resemble a movie they're not old enough to watch. Dara, his voice cracking on the second syllable. Where are we going? Somewhere safe. You don't know that. No, I admitted. I don't. The building was limestone and glass. 12 stories of architectural restraint that whispered money so loudly it didn't need to shout. No doorman, no signage, just a steel door that opened with a thumbprint scan and an elevator that required both a key card and retinal verification. The elevator opened on the 9th floor. Kang Seongjin was waiting. He stood in the center of what could only be called a war room. 12 monitors on the far wall, security feeds, financial data streams, satellite imagery. A long table covered in maps, photographs, architectural blueprints. 3 men flanked him, not bodyguards. These moved differently. Soldiers. His gaze went to Marcus first. This is the brother, not a question. Marcus, this is. I know who he is. Marcus's voice was steady, steadier than mine. Kang Seongjin, founder and head of the Kang Syndicate, controls shipping routes from Incheon to Newark, suspected of, well, a lot. I stared at my brother. How do you? I go to Brooklyn Tech, Dora. We have Wi-Fi. Something flickered across Seongjin's face. Not quite amusement, something sharper. Your brother is well-informed. He looked at me. You should be concerned about that. I'm concerned about a lot of things right now. Good, concern keeps people alive. He turned to the monitors, tapped a screen. The blonde's photograph expanded Natasha Varon, seated at a cafe somewhere European, phone pressed to her ear. Surveillance quality, taken without her knowledge. She disappeared within an hour of leaving Venom, Seongjin said. Private charter to Seoul. She's back in Yun's territory now, which means Yun Do-won knows exactly how his plan failed. Every detail, including the bartender who stopped the glass. Yun Do-won. He tapped again. A second photograph, Korean, late 40s, silver-streaked temples, military-style jacket. Eyes that looked like they'd been carved from frozen metal. Head of the Yun Syndicate, my father's oldest rival. They fought for control of the Pacific shipping lanes for 30 years. My father won. When he died, Yun assumed I'd be manageable. His voice was steady, but I heard the blade beneath the calm. He sent Natasha to prove it. And now he's sent people after me. The threat to your brother wasn't Yun's style. Too crude, too personal. He turned from the screens. Which means someone closer gave the order. Someone who already knew where you lived before I did. The implication landed like ice water. Someone inside your organization. Yes. The word sat between us. 3 letters. A grenade with the pin pulled. You have a traitor. I have a ghost. His jaw tightened. Someone with access to my security protocols, my personnel files, the identity of every asset in my network. Someone close enough to feed Yun real-time intelligence, and I don't know who. Marcus was set up in a guest room on the 10th floor, king bed, private bathroom, a 65-inch TV he pretended not to be impressed by. A tutor would arrive in the morning. His schoolwork would continue. Every detail handled with the ruthless efficiency of a government operation. I don't like this, Marcus said from his doorway. I know. You trust him? No. Then why are we here? I thought about the photograph. Marcus in the window. The crosshairs they might as well have drawn over his face. Because the alternative is a body bag, and I'm not putting you in one. Marcus held my gaze, then nodded once sharp and closed the door. I found Seonjin in the kitchen, a kitchen that had clearly never been used. He was standing at the counter, jacket removed, sleeves rolled to his elbows, pouring 2 glasses of whiskey. He pushed one toward me. I don't drink on shift. You're not on shift. I'm always on shift. That almost smile, the dangerous one. Then consider this a performance review. I took the glass, sipped. The whiskey was extraordinary, smooth, peaty, warm in a way that felt like swallowing sunlight. What happens now? I asked. Now I find the ghost, and Yun, he drank, simultaneously. And until then, Marcus and I just stay here, in your building, under your protection. Under my roof, he set the glass down, under my watch. That sounds like a cage. Cages have locks on the outside. He met my eyes. Your door doesn't lock at all. You can leave whenever you choose. I won't stop you. But if you leave, I can't guarantee your safety. Yun's people are systematic. They'll find you. They'll use your brother to make you talk, to find out what else you know about my operation, what you've seen, what I've told you. And when they've extracted everything useful, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. So I'm free to leave and die, or stay and live. You're free, period. The consequences of freedom are yours to weigh. I stared at him across the counter. Blood on no one's hands tonight, but the potential for it hanging in the air between us like smoke. Why do you care? I asked. And don't give me the debt speech. You sent a car to my block before I even called. You had me investigated before the glass hit the bar. This isn't repayment. This is something else. His expression shifted. A tectonic movement, barely visible but seismically significant. Do you know how many people were in that room? He said quietly. You already asked me this. 43 people, staff, security, patrons. The bartender at the far end, Mikkel, had direct line of sight. The cocktail waitress was within arm's reach. My own security detail, 3 men trained to detect threats, missed it entirely. He moved closer. 1 step. The kitchen shrank. 43 people, and the one who intervened was a 26-year-old woman who can't afford her brother's tuition. Is that supposed to make me feel special? It's supposed to make you understand why I find you significant. The word landed like a stone in still water. Observation without courage is useless. You didn't just see her poison the glass. You put yourself between an assassin and her target, knowing that either of us could have killed you for it. I wasn't thinking about. That's exactly the point. He was close now, close enough that I could see the faint scar along his jawline, old, healed, mapping some ancient violence. You acted on instinct, on character. Do you know how rare that is in my world? I deal in calculated loyalty, paid allegiance, men who die for me because I own their mortgages. And you risked your life for a stranger because you couldn't not. My breath caught, not because of his proximity, though that was sending signals to every nerve I owned, but because no one had ever described me that way before. Not my mother, who'd loved me fiercely but practically. Not the professors who'd seen potential but not the person. Not any man who'd ever looked at me and seen something less than what I was. Character. Stop looking at me like that, I said. Like what? Like I'm a problem you're trying to solve. You're not a problem. His voice dropped, barely above a whisper. You're the answer to one I didn't know I had. The air between us could have caught fire. I set down my glass. Good night, Mr. Kang. Seonjin. Good night, Seonjin. I walked away on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. Behind me, I felt his gaze track every step. Heavy, burning, a physical weight between my shoulder blades. The bedroom was simple by his standards, which meant it was the nicest room I'd ever slept in. White linens, a window overlooking the river, 3 outfits in the closet, all in my precise size. His assistant hadn't estimated. She'd known. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my hand pressed to my sternum, feeling my heart slam against my palm like it was trying to escape. You're the answer to one I didn't know I had. What do you do with a sentence like that? What do you do with a man like that? I closed my eyes. Sleep came in broken fragments, full of blonde hair and amber liquid and dark eyes that saw through everything. I woke to gunfire. Not close, somewhere below, muffled by concrete, but unmistakable. That particular crack, crack, crack that you never forget once you've grown up hearing it in Bed-Stuy. I was out of bed and moving before my brain engaged. Marcus. Marcus. I yanked open the door and nearly collided with a wall of black tactical gear. One of Seonjin's men, young, Korean, submachine gun held across his chest. Stay inside. My brother. Secured, stay inside. More gunfire, closer, shouting in Korean, rapid, overlapping, then a scream, short, male, cut off mid-breath. The lock clicked from outside. I was trapped. The next 4 minutes were the longest of my life. Gunshots, breaking glass, then that specific, horrible silence that follows violence, the silence of aftermath. The lock clicked, the door opened. Kang Seonjin stood in the doorway. Same black shirt from last night, now with a blood spray across the left shoulder, fine as mist. Hair disheveled for the first time since I'd met him. A matte black pistol held at his side like a natural extension of his arm. Get dressed, we need to move. What happened? Yun happened, faster than I anticipated. 6 infiltrators, all neutralized. His eyes found mine, and I saw something I hadn't seen before, not fear, but urgency. A plan fracturing in real time. These were scouts. The main assault is coming. Marcus. Already in the vehicle. Get dressed, now. 40 seconds. Black pants, black turtleneck, boots that fit like they'd been made for my feet. We moved through the hallway at 1 step below running, Seonjin's body between me and every door we passed. The war room was destroyed. Monitors shattered. 2 men dragging a body in gray tactical gear toward the wall. The elevator, the garage, the Escalade, engine running, Marcus's silhouette in the back seat. But there was a second car, black, armored, waiting behind the Escalade with a different security detail. Seonjin opened the Escalade's door for me. That incongruous chivalry in the middle of blood and chaos. The second car takes you to a safe house in Connecticut, he said. My men will. You're not coming. Not a question. I could see it, the way he stood rooted to the concrete, weight balanced, body angled back toward the building. He was staying. I need to draw Yun's attention away from you. If we travel together, you become a target. If we separate, I have no idea if you're alive or dead. You'll know. I'll make sure you know. That's not, my voice cracked. Actually cracked, splintering down the middle like something I'd been holding together for 4 years. Since my mother's hand went slack in mine, since I learned what it felt like to watch someone slip away and be powerless to stop it. I can't do this again. The words came out raw, stripped. I can't sit in some room waiting to find out if someone I caught myself, bit down on whatever was climbing up my throat. I'm not doing that again. Seonjin went still, completely still, the way he'd gone still at the bar when I mouthed those 3 words. Like every molecule in his body had been reassigned to the task of processing what I'd just said. Someone you what? His voice was quiet, careful, the voice of a man handling something fragile. Someone I saved. I'm not losing someone I saved. It was a lie, and we both knew it. What I'd almost said was bigger, more dangerous, completely insane given that I'd known this man for 4 days. But he let the lie stand. Then you ride with me, he said. The Escalade carrying Marcus and his security detail went north. We went south. Through streets that were still dark, still sleeping, the city ignorant of the war being waged in its veins. Seonjin drove himself, no chauffeur, no detail. Just the 2 of us in an armored vehicle cutting through lower Manhattan at 60 miles an hour. His right hand on the wheel, his left resting on the center console. I stared at that left hand, scarred knuckles, onyx ring. The hand that had killed men, signed warrants, poured me whiskey with a steadiness that bordered on surgical. Where are we going? I asked. The docks. I have a ship, clean registration, no connection to the Kang name. It's our fallback if the city becomes untenable. A ship. You have a getaway ship. I have contingencies for every scenario. It's how I've survived 37 years in an industry where the average life expectancy is 41. That's reassuring. It's not meant to be. It's meant to be honest. We crossed Canal Street. Chinatown was a blur of darkened storefronts and neon ghosts, the signs turned off but still glowing faintly, like embers. Ask me, Seonjin said. Ask you what? Whatever you've been holding since the booth, I can hear it. He glanced at me. You think loudly, Ms. Maddox. Dara. Dara, my name in his accent. God. The way the consonants softened, the vowels deepened, like he was translating me into a language only he spoke. Fine. I turned in my seat to face him. Who was she? Natasha. Before she was a weapon, who was she to you? His jaw tightened. No one. 3 weeks is not no one. You don't let someone that close unless you're using them to identify the traitor in your organization. His voice went flat, surgical. Natasha was bait. I suspected a leak for months, intelligence reaching Yun that only someone in my inner circle could provide. So I invited a known operative into my bed and waited to see who in my organization fed her information. I stared at him. You let an assassin sleep next to you, deliberately. I sleep with a gun under my pillow. She would have discovered that before she discovered any weakness. And the poison. An escalation I didn't predict. For the first time, something that might have been regret crossed his face. I expected surveillance, data theft, perhaps a staged kidnapping, not tetrodotoxin in my whiskey, not at Venom. She moved faster than my timeline allowed. Because the traitor told her to. Because the traitor is getting desperate. He turned onto West Street, the Hudson appearing on our right, black water reflecting the skyline. Whoever they are, they're accelerating. The breach of my safe house tonight confirms it. They knew the location, the security codes, the rotation schedule. That information exists in exactly 3 places: my personal server, my head of securities files, and... He stopped. The car slowed. Ahead of us, at the entrance to the pier, 3 black SUVs were parked in a V formation across the road. Headlights off, engines running. Waiting. Seonjin. I see them. His left hand moved from the console to the gun in the door panel. He drew it smooth, silent, automatic, and set it on his thigh. How did they know? I whispered. The ship. Someone told them about the ship. His voice had changed, gone cold in a way I hadn't heard before, not calm, not controlled. Cold, the absolute zero of a man who's just realized the walls of his world are thinner than he thought. Only 4 people knew about this contingency. And one of them is sitting in those SUVs. Or sent them here. The lead SUV's door opened. A man stepped out, tall, Korean, impeccably dressed even at 4 a.m. He stood in the headlights of the car behind him, his shadow stretching toward us across the wet asphalt. Seonjin's breath changed. I felt it more than heard it, a shift in the rhythm, a catch, the smallest fracture in the foundation of his composure. "You know him," I said. "Yes." "Who is he?" The pause lasted 3 heartbeats. I counted. "Park Jin-young." Seonjin's voice was gravel over glass. "My chief of intelligence, my mentor, the man who trained me after my father died. The man who was now standing between us and escape, flanked by soldiers, blocking the only route to the water." "He's the ghost," I said. Seonjin didn't answer, didn't need to. His silence was the loudest confirmation I'd ever heard. He reversed the car. Tires screamed against wet asphalt. The Escalade swung backward in a controlled arc, Seonjin's hands moving on the wheel with the precision of a man who'd driven away from death before. Gunfire erupted behind us. Bullets slammed into the rear armor, metallic punches that sounded like God knocking on the trunk. The back window spiderwebbed but held. Armored glass. Thank God for armored glass. Seonjin threw the car into drive. We rocketed forward, cutting down a side street so narrow the mirrors nearly scraped the buildings on either side. "Get down," his voice was ice. I didn't get down. I twisted in my seat, staring through the cracked rear window. The 3 SUVs peeled away from the pier, falling into pursuit. "Dara, down." "I can see them. 3 vehicles, the lead one is closing." He looked at me, one glance, half a second, and something shifted in his expression. Not anger, not frustration, something closer to admiration, horrified admiration. "Glove compartment," he said. I opened it. Inside, a second pistol, small, black utilitarian. "You know how to use that." "I grew up in Bed-Stuy." "That's not an answer." "My mother's boyfriend taught me to shoot when I was 14, right before he left." I checked the magazine. Full. He was useless at everything else, but he could handle a firearm. "Safety's on the left side." "I know where the safety is." The car burst onto West Side Highway. Empty at this hour, a straight dark ribbon running along the water. Seonjin floored it. The speedometer climbed past 80, 90, the engine howling. The first SUV was 50 meters back and closing. A man leaned out the passenger window. The muzzle flash was brief and bright, a burst of orange in my peripheral vision. Bullets pinged off the roof. Seonjin swerved. The car jolted sideways. My shoulder slammed into the door. "There's a construction zone at 14th Street, he said, his voice impossibly calm, like he was giving directions to a restaurant. "Concrete barriers. I can bottleneck them there. When I break, hold on." "And then what?" "And then we see how good your mother's boyfriend's lessons were." The construction zone appeared, orange barrels, concrete jersey barriers narrowing the highway to a single lane. Seonjin aimed for the gap. The Escalade threaded through with inches to spare on either side. Then he braked. Hard. The car slewed sideways, blocking the narrow passage. Inertia threw me forward, the seatbelt caught, crushing the air from my lungs. "Move to the back seat. Stay below the window line. If anyone gets past me." "I shoot them." "You shoot them." He was out of the car before I could respond. Standing in the gap between the concrete barriers, gun raised, completely exposed, his silhouette backlit by the pursuing headlights. The first SUV tried to brake. Too late. It slammed into a concrete barrier at 40 miles an hour, the hood crumpling like paper. The second swerved, clipped the first, spun sideways across the highway. The third stopped. Doors opened. Seonjin fired. I'd never seen anyone shoot like that. Not in movies, not in the YouTube clips Marcus watched, not in any reality I'd inhabited. He fired with a rhythm that was almost musical, measured, precise, each shot placed with the deliberate intent of a surgeon making an incision. 2 men went down. A third took cover behind the spinning SUV. Then I heard it, footsteps behind us, coming from the other direction, through the construction zone from the north side. They'd flanked us. "Sionjin," I screamed. He didn't hear me, or couldn't. The gunfire was too loud, his focus too absolute. The first flanker appeared through the gap, gray tactical gear, automatic weapon moving fast. He saw the escalade. Saw the woman in the back seat, raised his rifle. I didn't think. My mother's boyfriend, Ray, his name was Ray, useless and absent and half-drunk every time he touched a gun, had taught me one thing worth remembering. Don't aim at the target. Aim where the target's going to be. I squeezed the trigger twice. The first shot went wide, sparked off concrete. The second didn't. The man folded, dropped, lay still. The third flanker came through the gap, and I fired again, 3 rounds, center mass, the way Ray had drilled into me on that abandoned lot in Red Hook, while empty beer cans served as targets. He fell. Then silence. The ringing, underwater, cotton-packed silence of aftermath. Sionjin appeared at the car door. His shirt was torn. A graze along his left arm was bleeding, shallow, not serious, but the blood was vivid against his skin in the gray pre-dawn light. He looked at the 2 bodies on the ground behind the car, looked at the gun in my hands, looked at me. "Bed-stuy," he said quietly. "Bed-stuy." Something broke open in his face. Not the controlled almost smile, not the careful mask. Something raw and real and shattered, the look of a man who just watched the impossible happen and couldn't assemble a framework to contain it. "We need to move," I said, because someone had to say something practical before the adrenaline crash turned me into a puddle. "More are coming." "Yes," he didn't move, just stood there, blood running down his arm, staring at me like I'd rewritten a fundamental law of his universe. "More are coming." Then he reached into the car, took my face in both hands, the gun hand and the other, blood-warm fingers against my jaw, and pressed his forehead to mine. We stayed like that for 3 seconds. Breathing, trembling, alive. "Thank you," he whispered. "Again." "Stop almost dying," I whispered back. "I'm running out of ways to save you." He pulled back, and this time the smile reached his eyes. "Get in the front seat. We need a new plan." The new plan was a warehouse in Red Hook. Irony wasn't lost on me, Red Hook, where Ray had taught me to shoot, where my mother used to buy plantains from the corner bodega before it closed, where the water smelled like diesel and salt and endings. Sionjin's people had the warehouse flagged as a cold site, unused, unregistered, unknown to anyone outside his most trusted circle, which, given Park Jinyoung's betrayal, now consisted of exactly 2 operatives and 1 bartender. We arrived at 5:17 a.m. The sky was turning gray, that pale, exhausted gray that New York wears like a hangover. Sionjin parked inside the warehouse, cut the engine, sat in the driver's seat for a full minute without moving. Then he said, "I should have seen it. Jinyoung. He recruited me. After my father was assassinated, I was 19, drowning, trying to hold together an empire I wasn't ready to inherit. Jinyoung appeared like a lifeboat, taught me strategy, discipline, control, taught me to read a room, to anticipate betrayal before it crystallized." He laughed, one breath, bitter. He taught me everything except how to recognize it in him. I reached across the console, took his left hand, the one with the onyx ring, the one that had just killed men with surgical precision. His fingers were cold, shaking minutely, almost imperceptibly, but shaking. My mother used to say that the people who hurt us worst are the ones we let closest. I ran my thumb along his knuckles, the scars they're told stories I'd probably never hear. She was talking about my father, a man she loved so completely that when he left, she spent the rest of her life looking for him in every room she entered. Sionjin's hand turned beneath mine. His fingers laced through mine, slowly, deliberately, like a man picking up something he was afraid to break. What happened to her? Cancer 4 years ago. She died holding my hand in a hospital that smelled like bleach and bad coffee. I swallowed. I was 22. Marcus was 13. I promised her I'd keep him safe. That's the only promise I've ever made that I refuse to break. And you think that promise led you here? I think that promise led me to a bar where I watched a woman poison a glass and decided I couldn't let it happen. Everything after that is just gravity. He squeezed my hand. Dara. Yeah. I've killed 17 people personally. I've ordered the deaths of more. I run an empire built on shipping routes that transport things no customs agent will ever see. I have blood on my hands that will never wash clean, and enemies who will hunt me until one of us stops breathing. I know. I'm not a good man. I know that too. Then why are you still holding my hand? I looked at him, really looked, past the sharp jaw, the scar, the depthless eyes. Looked at the 19-year-old who'd inherited an empire and a death sentence. The boy who'd been shaped into a weapon by a man who was now trying to destroy him. Because you're not the worst man I've known, I said. And because when I held my mother's hand while she died, I swore I'd never let go of anyone important again. I'm important. You're significant. Your word, not mine. The dawn light filtered through the warehouse's grimy skylights, turning everything silver and dust. We sat in that light, hands intertwined across the console of an armored car riddled with bullet holes. Two people who had no business being in the same sentence, let alone the same vehicle. He kissed me. Not like I expected, not desperate, not claiming, not the violent collision of two people running on adrenaline and proximity. He kissed me slowly, carefully, his hand coming up to cradle the back of my neck, his mouth finding mine with a tenderness that dismantled me more completely than force ever could. He tasted like gunpowder and whiskey and survival. I kissed him back, one hand on his chest, feeling his heart slam against my palm, fast, faster than it should have been for a man who just displayed the emotional range of a glacier. My other hand found the wound on his arm, and I felt him wince against my mouth, not pulling away, just absorbing the pain, folding it into whatever this was between us. When we broke apart, his breathing was ragged. His thumb traced my jawline, gentle, so gentle, from a hand that had ended lives an hour ago. You're going to ruin me, he said. You're already ruined. I pressed my forehead to his. I'm just the first person who noticed. Something broke open behind his eyes, quietly, irreversibly, like a lock clicking open after years of rusted resistance. Stay, he said. Not a command, not a negotiation. A request, raw and terrified and honest. I'm not going anywhere, I said. But we need to deal with Jinyoung. We need to end this. The vulnerability sealed itself back behind his composure. Not gone, I'd seen it now, and you can't unsee a thing like that, but controlled, weaponized. He was a man who turned every emotion into a tool, and whatever he felt for me had just been sharpened into something dangerous. Yes, he said, we do. We spent the next 6 hours in that warehouse, and I watched Kang Seonjin dismantle his own empire. Not literally, but strategically, he tore it apart and rebuilt it in real time. Phone calls in rapid Korean, encrypted messages on devices I didn't recognize. He identified every asset Jinyoung had access to and either froze, relocated, or burned it. I understood maybe a quarter of what was happening, but I understood the shape of it, the systematic elimination of a man's influence, the severing of tendrils that had wrapped through an organization over decades. At noon, he confirmed Marcus was safe. The Connecticut house was untouched. Jinyoung didn't know about it because Seonjin had purchased it off books, through a shell company even his intelligence chief couldn't trace. One advantage of trusting no one completely, Seonjin said. You always keep something back. By evening, the picture was clear. Jinyoung had been feeding information to Yun Do-won for 18 months. Slowly at first, troop movements, shipping schedules, security rotations. Then faster, bolder, safe house locations, financial accounts, the identities of undercover operatives. He'd orchestrated the assassination attempt at Venom as the endgame. Kill Sionjin, install a puppet leader, merge the Kang and Yun syndicates under a single command. His command. He doesn't want to serve Yun, Sionjin said, staring at a map of Manhattan he'd pinned to the warehouse wall, red dots marking Jinyoung's known positions. He wants to replace both of us. Yun is a tool. I was a stepping stone. Jinyoung wants the throne. So what do we do? Sionjin looked at me, that calculating predator gaze, but softer now, or maybe I'd just learned to read the softness hidden underneath. We give him what he wants, he said. We let him think he's winning, and then we take everything. A trap. The oldest play in the book, but it works if the bait is convincing enough. What's the bait? He didn't answer immediately. Didn't need to. I saw it in his eyes, the apology already forming behind the strategy. Me, I said. Dara. You need someone Jinyoung doesn't account for, someone outside his intelligence framework, someone he dismissed as irrelevant. I felt the logic clicking into place, inevitable and terrifying. The invisible bartender, the wallpaper. I won't ask you to do this. You're not asking, I'm volunteering. The risk. The risk exists whether I'm involved or not. Jinyoung knows about me. He sent people to photograph my brother. He'll come for me eventually, either as leverage or elimination. At least this way, I choose how it happens. The silence between us hummed. You know, Sionjin said quietly, when I told you that you were something other than a bartender, I didn't mean a soldier. I'm not a soldier. I'm a woman who grew up broke in Brooklyn, raised her brother alone, and learned to shoot from a man named Ray who couldn't stay sober past noon. I crossed the warehouse floor until I was standing in front of him. But I'm also the woman who covered your glass, who shot 2 men on a highway, and who is choosing to stand next to you. Not because you own my safety, because I want to. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he pulled me against him, one arm around my waist, his face buried in my hair, and held on like I was the only fixed point in a universe that had just revealed itself to be made of smoke. If anything happens to you, he said against my temple, I will burn this city to the ground. Nothing's going to happen to me. You can't promise that. Watch me. The trap was elegant, brutal. 3 days later, word filtered through Sionjin's remaining loyal channels that the Kang boss was meeting a weapons contact at a private club in Midtown. Alone. No security. A sign of desperation. A cornered king making reckless moves. Jinyoung would come. He had to. A wounded, isolated Sionjin was the prize he'd been engineering for 18 months. But the meeting was fiction. The club was real, a jazz lounge on 46th Street that Sionjin owned through a labyrinth of LLCs. And the person sitting in the private booth when Jinyoung arrived wouldn't be Sionjin. It would be me. I wore the professional outfit, hair pulled back, no makeup, looking exactly like what I was, a woman who didn't belong in a room like this. The booth was wired, cameras in the light fixtures. Sionjin and his 2 remaining loyal operators were in the building next door, watching every feed, listening to every sound, close enough to intervene in 45 seconds. 45 seconds. That was the margin. 45 seconds between the signal and extraction. A lot can happen in 45 seconds. I sat in the booth and waited. The jazz quartet played something slow and melancholic. The whiskey sat in front of me, untouched. I thought about my mother, about Marcus, about a man with blood on his hands who'd kissed me like I was sacred. At 9:17 p.m., Park Jinyoung walked in. He was smaller than I expected. Compact, precise, with the bearing of a man who'd spent his life in the shadows of larger men. Silver-streaked hair. A face that was handsome in a forgettable way. The kind of face designed to blend, to be overlooked, to stand beside power without drawing attention. He stopped when he saw me. You're not Sionjin. No, I said. I'm the bartender. His expression cycled, confusion, recalculation, something that might have been amusement. He slid into the booth across from me with the controlled ease of a man who'd sat across from danger many times. The girl from Venom. He studied my face with the clinical interest of a collector examining an unexpected specimen. I have to admit, I underestimated you. Most people do. It's the best advantage a person can have. He settled back, unbuttoning his jacket. So, Sionjin sends his bartender to negotiate. How far the mighty have fallen. He didn't send me. I came myself. Interest flickered. Why? Because I have something you want. And what would that be? The access codes to Sionjin's offshore accounts. 16 accounts across 9 jurisdictions. $3.7 billion. I watched his eyes, watched the greed flash behind the composure, quick as a snake's tongue. He keeps them encrypted on a personal server. I know the decryption key. And why would you betray the man who's been protecting you? Because protection isn't partnership. He treats me like an asset, useful, valuable, temporary. I'm tired of being someone's chess piece. I leaned forward. You understand that, don't you? Being close to power, shaping it, never holding it. The calculation behind his eyes was visible, gears turning, scenarios assessed, risks weighed. He was evaluating me the way he evaluated everything, as a tool to be used or a threat to be eliminated. What do you want in return? He asked. Safety, for me and my brother. New identities, relocation, enough money to disappear. I don't want your empire, I just want out. And Sionjin. Sionjin made his choices. I'm making mine. Jinyoung smiled. It was a cold smile, the smile of a man who'd spent 40 years manipulating people and believed he was watching it happen again. You know, he said, leaning back, I trained him from the age of 19, taught him to read rooms, anticipate threats, control his emotions. He tilted his head. The one thing I could never teach him was how to stop trusting people who didn't deserve it. Is that what I am? Someone who doesn't deserve trust? That's what everyone is, Ms. Maddox. He reached into his jacket. The question is who figures it out first. I saw the gun. Small, silver, appearing in his hand like a magic trick. You're very convincing, Jinyoung said, pointing it at my chest. But I didn't survive 40 years by believing beautiful stories from desperate women. Sionjin is watching, isn't he? Listening, waiting for me to incriminate myself. My heart stopped, then restarted at twice the speed. You should know, he continued, his voice conversational, almost gentle, that I identified the cameras in the light fixtures before I sat down. My men are currently neutralizing your boyfriend's surveillance team in the building next door, and in approximately 30 seconds, 4 of my operatives will enter through the kitchen. He'd known the entire time. So here's what's going to happen, Jinyoung said. You're going to call Sionjin, tell him to come here, alone, unarmed, or I'm going to paint this booth with you. The jazz quartet played on, oblivious. I looked at the gun, looked at the man holding it, looked at the door to the kitchen where I could already hear footsteps. And I did the only thing I could think of. I knocked the whiskey glass off the table. It shattered on the floor, a crash that cut through the music, that turned every head in the club, that created 1 second of chaos in which every eye shifted away from the booth. 1 second was enough. I dove beneath the table as the gun went off, the bullet punching through the leather where my head had been, and came up on Jinyoung's side, driving my shoulder into his ribs with every ounce of bed-stuy survival instinct I possessed. We hit the floor together. The gun skittered across the marble. Jinyoung's elbow caught my jaw, stars exploded across my vision, but I held on, grappling for control, my fingers finding his throat, his wrist, anything. Then the wall exploded. Not the wall, the door. Sionjin came through it like a force of nature, not through the front entrance, not through the kitchen, but through a service door hidden behind the bar that Jinyoung's intelligence had never mapped. Because Sionjin owned the building, and he'd built the door himself, a contingency for a contingency, the paranoia of a man who trusted no one. Except, apparently, me. Sionjin crossed the room in 4 strides. His gun was already up, already aimed. The jazz quartet had scattered. Patrons were screaming, ducking, running. Jinyoung scrambled for his weapon. His fingers brushed the grip. Seonjin's foot came down on his hand. The older man looked up at his protege, his creation, the weapon he'd forged and then tried to destroy. "Hello, teacher," Seonjin said. "Seonjin, be reasonable." "I am being reasonable." His voice was the coldest thing in the room. "Reasonable would be putting a bullet in your skull. Instead, I'm going to let you live." Jinyoung's eyes widened. "I'm going to let you live," Seonjin repeated, "so you can watch everything you built, every alliance, every asset, every shadow you've cultivated for 40 years, get dismantled. Publicly. Irreversibly. I have the evidence. Every communication between you and Yun, every transaction, every betrayal time-stamped and documented." He crouched down, bringing himself level with the man who'd taught him everything. "You taught me to anticipate betrayal before it crystallized. Thank you for the lesson." Jinyoung stared at him, then at me, still on the floor, jaw aching, heart racing, alive. "The bartender," he said, quiet now, deflated. "You trusted the bartender over me." "She earned it." Seonjin didn't look away from his mentor's face. "You spent it." Jinyoung was taken that night. Not killed, dismantled. His network exposed, his accounts frozen, his allies confronted with evidence so damning that loyalty evaporated like breath on glass. Yun Do-won received a different kind of visit. The details I never asked for. The outcome I understood from the silence that followed, the sudden, absolute silence of a threat that no longer existed. It took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of operations I wasn't part of, conversations in Korean I couldn't follow, and long nights in the Tribeca building where I paced and cooked and helped Marcus with his homework and tried to pretend my life hadn't become a crime thriller. Seonjin came and went. Some nights he returned with blood on his clothes. Some nights he didn't return at all, but he always called, always. Even if it was 3 a.m. and his voice was raw with exhaustion, he called. "Are you safe?" I'd ask. "I'm alive." "That's not the same thing." "It's the best I can offer tonight." A pause. "How's Marcus?" "Beating the tutor at chess. I think the tutor is letting him win." "The tutor is a former intelligence analyst. He is not letting him win." And I'd laugh, quiet, 3 a.m. laughter that felt like medicine, and he'd breathe on the other end of the line. And for a moment the distance collapsed, and we were just 2 people in the dark, holding on. On the 22nd day, he came home. Not the war room, not the kitchen. He came directly to my door and knocked, softly, which was how I knew something had shifted, because Kang Seonjin didn't do anything softly. I opened it. He stood there. No blood. No gun. Clean shirt, dark circles under his eyes, the new scar on his neck still healing. He looked exhausted in a way that went deeper than sleep, the exhaustion of a man who'd been dismantling his own world and rebuilding it from scratch. "It's done," he said. "Jinyoung. In custody. Federal, my attorney's negotiated jurisdiction. He'll never see daylight again." "Yun. Eliminated. His syndicate has fractured. The shipping lanes are secure." "And you." He looked at me, and the mask, that perfect, impenetrable, beautiful mask, cracked. Not all at once. Slowly. A fracture line running from his eyes to his mouth, from his composure to the raw, unguarded exhaustion beneath. "Tired," he said. "Very tired." I pulled him inside, closed the door, guided him to the bed where he sat on the edge like a man who'd forgotten how to stop moving and was trying to remember what stillness felt like. I knelt in front of him, took his hands, the ones with the scarred knuckles and the onyx ring. "Stay," I said. He looked down at me with an expression I'd never seen, not on him, not on anyone. The look of a man who'd spent his entire life building walls and had just watched a woman walk through them like they were made of air. "For how long?" "For as long as you want." "What if I want forever?" "Then you should probably learn to cook. I can't carry the kitchen forever." He laughed, a real laugh, short, surprised, wrenched out of him like a confession. It transformed his face. Made him look younger, made him look like the boy he must have been before the world sharpened him into a blade. He pulled me up, onto the bed, into his arms, held me against his chest, my ear pressed to his heartbeat, steady now, slow, the rhythm of a man who'd finally stopped running. Dara. Yeah. I have something to tell you. If it's about another traitor, I'm going to need a raise. Not a traitor. He was quiet for a moment. His hand moved through my braids, carefully, learning the texture, the weight. When I had you investigated, I found something about your father. I went still. I don't have a father. You do, and I know who he is. His arms tightened around me. But that's a conversation for tomorrow. Tonight, I just want to be here, with you. I should have pressed, should have demanded answers, should have done anything other than lie there with my heart hammering and my mind spinning, and 1,000 questions climbing up my throat. But I didn't. Because tomorrow would come. It always did, with its betrayals and its revelations and its bullets and its blood. But tonight, in a building in Tribeca that didn't exist on any map, held by a man who didn't exist in any world I'd been prepared for, I was exactly where I needed to be. Not safe. Not certain. But significant. And in Kang Seonjin's world, that was the most dangerous thing of all. Outside, Manhattan glittered cold and vast and indifferent. Somewhere in Brooklyn, a bar called Venom was pouring drinks without me. Somewhere in Connecticut, a 17-year-old boy was beating an ex-intelligence analyst at chess. Somewhere in my blood, in my history, in the mystery Seonjin had just detonated like a bomb at the end of an already impossible night. A father I'd never known existed was waiting to be found. And I was going to find him. But first, I was going to lie here, in the arms of a monster who kissed like a prayer, listening to the heartbeat I'd saved with 3 mouthed words and a stolen glass. The heartbeat that now, impossibly, beat for me,